I don't come from a top tier undergraduate university. I come from a name like you wouldn't find it on the map typically, right? Like a local community college in Chennai. So I found a lot of shortcomings in my own profile. I need to speak to somebody who's been there, done that, which I think offered. I could speak to you to sort of get a baseline preparation, but then I could also speak to a current student who's less than a year ago done these interviews and they know what to expect.
Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan. I'm the founder of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA programs in the world. Today I have with me Vanshika. Vanshika worked with us to prepare for mock interviews for INSEAD and she is going to INSEAD finally. So without further ado, let's start with a very quick introduction. It's great to see you, Vanshika, after a long time. And congratulations that you're going to INSEAD very, very soon. So could you tell us a bit about yourself? What background did you come from? What were you doing before you decided to go for an MBA?
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Piyush. I'm very grateful for your support, you and your team. And just a little bit about me. So my name is Vanshika. I grew up in Chennai, right by the beach. So 24-ish years of my life I've spent in Chennai itself. I did an undergraduate program in economics and I was all set to enter the public policy space. I was very excited about education, healthcare, transforming the way people live their lives. And then undergraduate college placements came about and I ended up finding my way to Google for an internship and realizing that I can change lives even while working for organizations who share the same ideology and ethos as me. So I've been fortunate to have interned at Google, and then right after graduating, I started working at McKinsey and Company. My first year, I was working in the capacity of a research analyst. So essentially, it's a role where you support other consultants who are on ground, and you work with them and you build a perspective, you build market sort of perspectives, you build economic perspectives, you understand what companies are doing. So it's really a way of backing up a strategy with the right data. That was my role in the first year. And very quickly, I sort of grew and I jumped roles. And for 4 years at McKinsey and Company, I was an expert consultant. And I was able to find my way back to helping people. So I was actually an expert consultant in the people practice, in our people and organizational performance practice. And during that 4 years, I was really able to travel quite a bit, work with clients across Asia. So I spent a year in Vietnam, about a year in Thailand, a couple of months in Singapore, a couple of months in Bombay. So it was a very exciting time. I got exposed to a lot of geographies. And the natural rite of passage as a McKinsey consultant, I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And the MBA seemed like the right opportunity for me to build my skills, but also figure out what I want to do next. And that's what brought me to my MBA journey.
Right. That sounds absolutely incredible and kind of very much like a dream job for a lot of people, right? But that sounds absolutely very, very interesting, right? You've spent time across Vietnam, across Thailand, getting those international experiences. So where my understanding goes is, I'm assuming that you're looking to go back into the consulting domain post your MBA. Is that so?
Yeah, as of now, given I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know, I think consulting is my natural home. However, I am looking to switch geographies. So I'm looking to explore Europe and Middle East, which is why the INSEAD MBA also gives me that opportunity. It gives me direct access to those geographies. Right. But yes, consulting comes naturally to me. I've enjoyed it. So I would be very enthused to go back. But at the same time, if I get the opportunity to, I don't know, do something else, which is cool and exciting, you never know.
Right. Absolutely. Makes sense. So MBA is obviously you have a set goal in mind, but you also want to use the opportunity to maybe figure out some other things that you might find interesting, right? So help me understand why really INSEAD? Why not choose other schools or look at other schools which could equally be strong when it comes to consulting? What led you to INSEAD?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've only really formulated a very full understanding of, why an MBA university picks you and why you pick them after having gone through the entire process. To be real with you, when I first started, my rationale was I'm applying to all top 10 universities in the world. And that's it. Um, I probably had done very little research. It was more about hear and say brand name, Financial Times MBA 2022 rankings are out. These are the top 5, these are the top 10. That's where I want to be. It was that broad of a sort of target and understanding. But over the course of time, I think what's become really important to me is through conversations, through research, through meeting alumni, current students, through doing a couple of interviews, INSEAD and I just very naturally there was a real connect there. And seems like it's a connect that is not just from today, right? So fun background. My sister studied in France. She was a French teacher, and I was always exposed to sort of French culture in my household that way. She also found her husband and my current Jiju in France. I've been to France 5 times, right? I've not been to the US, etc. So for me, even though I got admitted into a couple of US universities, imagining a life there was a lot harder. And imagining a couple of years there was a lot harder as well. So INSEAD to me, two things which really stood out was personally, I felt a lot of connect while speaking to people. A lot of my colleagues, managers, partners in Asia were from INSEAD. And so the university didn't seem alien to me. It seemed to really be a university that I could see myself going to. And I think the second thing is outcomes wise, INSEAD just offered me everything I wanted. It's a 1-year program. There's great ROI. I mean, if you've seen the campus, Fontainebleau is just beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to spending a year of my life outside a hustle and bustle of a city and in a quaint little tucked away place. The diversity is something I really appreciate because I've had the chance to have diverse experiences and I want to continue doing that. So one part of it is the logical answer, diversity, outcomes, professors, courses, curriculum, employment opportunity, and ROI. But then there's a whole other part, which is just feeling personally really good about the choice, which is what it boiled down to in the end.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense, right? Having sort of talked to so many people, when you especially get admits from multiple schools, I think the only thing that you can actually rely on essentially to make that decision, especially when the schools are comparable in nature, is essentially what do you feel personally about those, right? And that does boil down to helping you make that decision very, very clearly. So now that you've been through the process, what would you suggest if, let's say, somebody came to you and asked for suggestions on how they could prepare for INSEAD? Now, based on your experiences, based on what you have seen, and you would have interacted with other colleagues as well who are already going to INSEAD, what would you give them as a suggestion? This is what you could do to build up your profile for getting into INSEAD.
Yeah, I'll answer this in 2 parts. One is not just for INSEAD. As you're applying to MBA universities in general, there's going to be a gut feeling, and there's going to be a couple of universities that sort of call out to you. I would say tune into that and put in effort to learn the language of that university in some way. Because when you are writing out your essays, when you're talking to people, either through interviews or even coffee chats, it becomes apparent to them that you are passionate about it, right? Versus sort of just going through the website and being surface level. So that's sort of my number one biggest recommendation. I have dinged interviews. I have dinged my Columbia interview because let me be real, I don't want to live in New York. And I think that was apparent. And I didn't know as much about the university, except for the fact that it was top ranked 2023, right? So I think it becomes apparent to people on the other side when you are not passionate about it. So that's sort of my number one biggest thing. Whatever calls out to you, sort of go after it, be curious, learn a little bit more, have an interesting factoid to say, attend events, sort of just like make it your life. And then it's a lot easier to have those conversations. But I think specifically for INSEAD, one thing that I really felt was important to showcase is this concept of diversity, is the concept of being a real global citizen. It doesn't matter if your role, for example, has not given you the opportunity to travel to 4 countries, right? That's not the average person's work experience. That's not typical. But have you had the opportunity to work with somebody who's across a border? Have you had the opportunity to volunteer across borders, or even within the country, the duality of experience between North and South, if you've had, some interesting experiences? I think INSEAD is a school that really values individuals who've had, multiple, who can bring together like a multifaceted sort of perspective to the classroom. So try to think about those duals or those multiples in your life, whether that's, hey, I came from arts, but now I work with a lot of engineers. Hey, I was born in the South, but I did a lot of my work in the North, and this was the difference. Or, hey, I got to travel to country A or B for work, and that's how I felt. I got to volunteer with people from this country, and that's what I learned. Even sort of interactions between juniors and seniors, like diversity is really what you make of it, but on many levels, I think that's what I was tested on in some ways, right. And that's what they were looking for. So,
right. INSEAD has as its motto, right? They're the business school for the world, and they're looking to develop those global leaders. So, whatever you've said, that makes perfect sense, because they're looking for people who can go across borders, work with people from different cultures. And in fact, I think the video essays that they have, they have those questions within those video essays as well, which touch upon those aspects very heavily. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, just a very quick sort of question here. How did you, or rather, I believe you worked on your applications, you worked on all the applications on your own or with another consultant, right? Yes. So what led you to sort of come to us in terms of your mock interviews prep? If you could help us understand a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, the applications are a whole other ball game. It's you sitting in your house, you're faceless, but you're trying to put down a story. And I've always been more comfortable with me writing away and then sending something over. But the interviews really petrified me. I didn't know what it would feel like to be face to face with people who gone to the university. INSEAD has alumni interviews. So people who've gone to the university, they've been there, they're extremely successful. What the expectation was, I didn't know what to expect. And I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while. I've seen some of the success stories. And I was really looking to speak to somebody who's been there, done that. And quite frankly, there are very limited other services which offer the opportunity to, hey, I need to speak to somebody who's been there, done that, which I think offered. I could speak to you to sort of get a baseline preparation, but then I could also speak to a current student who's less than a year ago done these interviews and they know what to expect. And the insights that I got were really the insights that helped add a whole other layer to my preparation. Which in my opinion is what moved the needle and made those conversations, both my interviews, a lot of fun. So that's why I reached out. It's because as much as I can speak to, senior folks that I know at McKinsey about INSEAD, they've done their interviews a decade ago, right? Or as much as I can speak to a generic interview guider or a person, they're just going to give me stuff that's not very relevant to INSEAD. And when I got in, I knew that that's what I needed to do to prepare.
Right. That makes a lot of sense and makes me feel very good as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. But one very quick question. What is, we've talked about the international aspect of INSEAD. We've talked about the diversity that it brings. But I'm kind of moving towards the rapid fire thing. So a very big question before we actually start the rapid fire. What would be that one thing that excites you supremely about INSEAD?
I think for me, it's the fact that they have two campuses.
Okay.
That is, that's the thing that strikes me the most, and I honestly the most excited about the fact that I get to learn and build a network in both Europe and Asia. I think that's where Asia is where the future is. Unfortunately, some standalone Asian universities are not as well ranked. So top 5 MBA with direct access to Asia, to me, that's what stood out.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Now let's begin with the rapid fire. So very few
Very
questions.
rapid.
Very rapid. You can elaborate as well. You can
This
make it
reminds
more
me
rapid.
of Coffee with Karan, and I'm very
Yes.
excited.
We have had these conversations before with other candidates. There's not going to be any hamper. I will clarify that.
Okay.
We have already received your hamper in terms of your admit.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the first question that I have is, now that you've been through the application process, you've applied to multiple schools, gotten admits, what have you realized is the biggest myth about MBA applications in general?
That you have to have done it all, and it's not okay to not have gaps in your application. Like, oh, I didn't volunteer. Oh, I don't have a sport. I don't have a hobby. I'm not like Trinity level 8 in music. That you have to be this perfect applicant. You really don't.
Okay.
Whatever you've done till now, it's more about finding the learnings and then showcasing what you've learned. It's lesser about having done it all and having been like quote unquote a model candidate.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Just a very quick follow-up question here. Did you have any such apprehensions when you started on your application?
Oh, absolutely. I found a lot of shortcomings in my own profile. I would constantly think about the fact that, I don't have any hobbies per se, which are outside of work, given my career was very demanding for 4 years. So I thought of that. I thought the 730 in the GMAT was not the best score. I thought with a 49 in quant, which is right on the border of you coming from an arts background being dismissed as non-quantitative, right? So there were always like apprehensions that I had about my profile. I don't come from a top tier undergraduate university. I come from a name like you wouldn't find it on the map typically, right? Like a local community college in Chennai. So it's like stuff like that that I always over-indexed on.
Right.
But I just think it's okay. It is what it is. Everybody has very unique experiences. I think it's more about picking out the highlights and showcasing them, and being able to talk about your drawbacks and failures also with the same amount.
And that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for sharing that, because from the outside, at this point of time, now that you're getting into INSEAD, right? What people are going to look at in your profile when they see your profile, they'll be like, obviously she had to get into INSEAD. She has a 730 GMAT. She came from McKinsey. Obviously she's going to INSEAD, right? What they would not know is that you still have those apprehensions. You still have those questions in mind. Do you come from a top tier university? Do you have hobbies? What kind of work have you done? Would it be impactful enough or not? And everybody has these apprehensions, right? So thanks for sharing that, because that is something I really like to bring out, that at the end of the day, it might feel like that the person who's on the other side of the table, who's in the business school,
Right.
They were born in another world.
Yeah.
But literally they have just been the same as you or me.
Exactly.
And they've just been able to express themselves in a better way.
I agree.
Right. The second question that I have is, from your perspective, how important is the GMAT or the GRE score in terms of getting into a top B school?
I think for me personally, I thought it was quite important. But having said that, it depends on your personality and ability. I would say, for example, I got a 630 the first time I wrote the GMAT. I sort of retook it. And if you might know this, I retook it in October and I missed round once. So that's like a call that I took, right? I can apply in round one with 630, or I can re-give it a month later in October instead of September and try to like hedge my chances. And it's just about that. It's about you, your personal journey, and deciding at what point does it become more important to keep working on the GMAT versus switching. So if you knock it out of the park, great. If you don't, that's fine. There are plenty of students who get in with what quote unquote Indians would consider an average score. And I think it's just depending on you, your profile, what parts of your profile you want to strengthen. Like I said, I came from an arts background. I read in college. I just used to read books and write reports. I never did any math. And so I was, and even at McKinsey, my work was less quantitative in nature. I was in the people practice. It was more strategic. So I wanted a better GMAT quantitative score to showcase that I'm able to cover that base. And so I worked for it, redid it in October, and I was happy with my score. So I would say evaluate your GMAT in sort of relation to the rest of your profile and try to use it as a complement to the rest of your profile versus over-indexing and spending all your time on the GMAT. But yes, for me, it was important.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. What was the most interesting part of the application process for you?
I think with INSEAD, what was most interesting is speaking to the alumni, the interview. But even before that, INSEAD has, for those of you who don't know, just start like a mock INSEAD sort of, even if you're not applying this year, you're just thinking about it, start an application. It's going to be pretty reflective. It's like therapy. You know, you're going to have to think about your achievements, your failures, things that you're good at, you're not good at, what you think about your perspectives on leadership, diversity. For me, that was very interesting. The application itself, the 7 or 8 essays or so that I had to write were all very interesting. I loved writing them. But I still really value the conversations I had with my interviewers the most. I, in fact, met one of my interviewers after I got in person. And it was lovely. It was really nice to meet the both of them. They're very encouraging. So if you get to the point of interviews, I would say it's going to be great either way. Just to meet 2 very accomplished people was everything for me.
And one part of the application process that you do not want to repeat at all, ever?
Just the documentation and like the logistic overload and, you know, attesting this in French and that in English. And I just think universities overall need to slightly do a better job at sort of, you know, everything else. Like I understand there's, you know, large amount of verification and scanning and uploading. I loved writing about myself and I loved talking to people, but then backing all of that up, yeah, that's quite stressful. Not to mention the visa process that I'm going through now. Be prepared. By the way, getting in is the easy part. Going there is probably harder. Once you get there, that's probably going to be the hardest. So yeah, no, don't mean to scare people, but
one final piece of advice for future MBA aspirants who are looking to get into top B schools.
I think your MBA success is a formula. It's time and effort. That's it, right? It's time, effort, and your knowledge or understanding of the process, the school, of yourself. Play around with this formula. If you have lesser time, you find somebody with understanding so that you can put in lesser time and you're getting the understanding and effort balanced out with a consultant. If you have all the time in the world, do it yourself. if you have, more money or resources, then you can spend less time. So I think it's just a formula. Just get the right support and the right resources as much as you can, because you kind of don't want to regret later that you didn't give it your best. So get the right support, get the right resources, do your research, talk to people. Yeah, form your own perspective. I think the odds are always in your favor if you put your best foot forward.
Absolutely amazing talking to you, Vanshika. I wish you the best for INSEAD and for the future careers that you build.
Thank you.
And absolutely lovely to get in touch with you, and hopefully we'll continue this association.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Piyush.